For those who don't know me, my name is Siraj, and I have been teaching economics and business for quite some time now. And I'm going to help you through with your exams last minute. So off we go, just to show you a few things before I can get started. Um, this will be my working document where I'll draw some diagrams for you if you must. And onto my slides where I shall take you through the real concepts of what you need to do. So about 30 slides to cover. Let's get on with it, all the way from the basics. So you may already know some of these concepts, but follow through with me so that we can um, get it from the beginning and know all the concepts correctly. So we're going to start off with the economic problem. The key problem here is that resources are scarce. Um, some may ask, what are these resources then? So if I were to broadly categorize, they would fall into land, labor, capital, and enterprise. Now, um, as I put it down here, land, labor, capital, enterprise, these are all the resources we have in our country. Land includes anything um, that's physical land or anything that's taken from nature. Labor is obviously human efforts, human beings. Capital, anything man-made like machine, money, and enterprise, sometimes the entrepreneur, the business or the business person. Now, now that we know what our resources are, we know that these resources are scarce. That means they're limited in supply. So when they are limited in supply and we have infinite wants, meaning unlimited wants, we want everything. If we have more money, we demand even more. So with these infinite wants and these finite or limited resources, there comes a problem. That is the basic economic problem. So, because we need to identify what do we do with our resources? We have only so much. There's only one planet Earth. What do we do? What do we make? How should we prioritize? Now, you obviously know the differences between wants and needs. Wants is something you desire, needs is something you need for survival. But because of this economic problem, because of our resources being finite and our wants being infinite, we must give up something if we want to buy something else. There's something what we call the opportunity cost. The next best alternative foregone. You have $100. You can choose whether to buy a phone or buy a laptop. So realistically, say you have $1,000. You can buy a phone or you can buy a laptop. The one you give up, obviously because you have limited supply of money, is called the opportunity cost. That's the next best. So suppose we pick the phone and we give up the laptop, which is our opportunity cost. But taking in a broad spectrum, if you're trying to understand this, we look at the basic economic problem. How do we solve this? You can look at the three all-important questions: what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. What to produce? Obviously, because we people are after money. We produce the thing that gives us the most profit, the thing that's everyone wants. How do we produce it? The most efficient ways. And for whom do we produce? Obviously, we're not doing it for charity. We producers are selfish. We want money. We do it for ourselves. So we're going to produce it for those who can pay us the most. So three real questions there: what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. Um, Moving on, we can divide our output into two items here, which are consumer goods and capital goods. Now follow along because we're going to use this concept later on as well. Broadly categorizing, if you take everything this world has made, they're either made for consumers or they're either made for producers. So you have consumer goods and producer goods. Sometimes we call this capital goods. Yeah. So food, a frying pan, a van. Capital goods can be like machinery, tractor, delivery van. So any of these that are made for producers are producer goods and consumers are consumer goods. So a little definition given there. Moving on, now this concept is very, very important. So pay close attention here. I'm going to take you through it little by little. Now, if we take all of our resources, land, labor, capital, and enterprise, as you see here, what can we do with our resources? How much can we produce? We're going to look at what we call a production possibility curve. In this, we're trying to say how much, what combination of goods can we produce with the existing resources in place? Can we produce 50 consumer goods and 50 capital goods? Or is it an 80-20? What combinations can we produce? Now, I'm going to show you something here. The PPC, follow my lines right here. So now it's already drawn, but if you look at this PPC, the yellow line that I'm drawing now is the original, it's the original PPC. Ignore everything else on this. If you produce on the line A or B, so I'm just selecting random points on the line. If you produce at A or B, it means you're producing at maximum possible output, meaning you're using all your resources and producing the maximum. Now, remember, this is a combination of goods. This definition says the line that shows the maximum possible output combinations of two goods and services an economy can produce if all resources are used up. So we're looking at consumer goods and capital goods. Now, mind you, you can shift this to anything you want, cheese and pizza, or whatever you want to include there, it doesn't matter. But I've picked consumer goods and capital goods. So at point A, they say that I can produce 80 consumer goods. At the same time, I can make 50 capital goods. But if I were to produce at B, I'd be producing 30 consumer goods and 100 capital goods. So if I were to increase my capital goods from 50 to 100, there would be what we call an opportunity cost of, in this case, 50 units from 80 to 30. So it's an opportunity cost of consumer goods because I've given up consumer goods. Now, that's one concept because it shows opportunity cost. Now, what else can I say as a concept? I'm wiping that out. If you look at point D, okay, point D is unattainable right now because we don't have the resources. All our resources are in this shaded area here. That's all the resources that we have in a country. We don't have any more. There's only so much land that we have. There's only so much labor that we have. So D is unattainable at the moment. If you look at point C, now we have so much of resources, yet we're producing within the line. This could only mean that we are not employing all our resources. There may be factories that are closed. There may be people that are unemployed. All these resources left unemployed. The land, labor, capital, and enterprise, all left unemployed, not used. Kind of like the world at this point. We're right after the recovery of the COVID period. So a lot of these places are closed. A lot of these places not being used. We are producing here within the curve. Yeah, this is very inefficient. We don't want to be there. Now, point A, on the other hand, can the PPC shift outwards over time? Can it shift outwards? The answer is yes, it can. These are for a few reasons. One of two reasons, maybe. First reason, you see your resources here. What if you discovered some other resources? Let's say our country discovered oil. And if you did discover oil, what do you think would happen to your output? It would increase. Now you have more resources. Because you do have more resources, you'd see that the PPC has shifted outward. So one is to discover more resources. Now, more resources. Now, I told you resources. One of the resources was labor as well, right? What if we had immigration, people coming into the country? That is also more resources. So if we do have more resources, the PPC will shift outwards. There's one other way we can shift outwards. Maybe we don't find more resources. We have the same amount of resources, but with the same resources, we learn how to produce better. We become more efficient. Maybe there's technology. Maybe you guys got educated and now you know how to produce something better. Yeah, and now you start to produce more with the same resources. So let's summarize here. Yeah, if you move from point A to B, that's what I'm saying here. It shows, or rather, if you produce at either A or B, either one of these points, It shows you're producing at your maximum, the maximum that you can produce in a country. But if A moves to B, we're moving from this point to this point, it's showing opportunity cost. Like I said, we're increasing from 50 to 100 here, but we're giving up um, 50 here. Yep, that's opportunity cost. The next concept is C, which I said was inefficient because we're producing within the line. We're not making maximum. The next concept, D, is unattainable, like I told you, because we don't have the resources, not enough resources, not there yet. Maybe someday, but not there yet. A to E would indicate that the curve is shifting outwards. If the curve is shifting outwards from A to E, for example, there's economic growth. If this curve shifts outwards, there's economic growth. And I told you it's for a few reasons. We find new resources. Maybe we got no productivity. Technology came in, so we're producing more with the same resources. Or immigration, because there's an increase in labor, so an increase in resources. Question is, though, can the curve shift inwards? Yes, it can. Because all these resources that we had are now destroyed. These extra resources got destroyed, so a curve shifted inwards. It shifted inwards. For example, an earthquake, a tsunami, anything, volcanic eruption, something or the other that destroyed all our resources and it shifted inwards. Can the point shift inwards from A to C, for example? Yes. This is when we go through a recession, when we don't use all our resources like COVID. So it's moving from here to here. We become very inefficient. But this is your PPC in a nutshell, and this is something that you can learn off it. So off we go. We're looking at the economic assumptions. Now, here we're learning to see if consumers are rational, meaning they're maximizing their benefit, or they're irrational, where they're not maximizing their benefit, where they know they could get better, but they're like, yeah, I don't want the better part of it. Now, what do consumers want? They obviously want good quality. They want a reasonable or low price. What do producers want? They want the cheapest supplier, or they want to charge the highest price from consumers, or they want higher profits. Now, these are obvious things, what producers want and what consumers want. But are there times where they do not want these good quality and reasonable low prices? Yes, there are times. Some of you are brand loyal. How many of you are brand loyal? You buy something knowing that you can get something cheaper outside, yet you buy this because it's my favorite brand. So you decide to pay a higher price. You're a little irrational then because you could have gotten it cheaper. Maybe you're influenced by others. All my friends are going there. I need to have that. If I don't have it, I won't be part of them. I want to be part of them. So influenced by others. Sometimes you have difficulties in calculating benefits. The key example I always give here is health insurance. How many of you have health insurance? If you were to be hospitalized and you go into a private hospital, you're going to pay thousands of dollars or rupees or whichever country you're from. But if you just paid health insurance and had it, you know that if you were hospitalized, the health insurance company would pay your bill for you. But you don't have it. And if you don't have it, maybe you're a little irrational right now. Maybe you found it difficult to calculate the benefits of this health insurance. Finally, buying habits. Not a habit, you just keep buying it. I still buy the Sunday newspaper. I don't read it. I don't know why I buy it. It's still there. It's just at home. Every week I just collect a brand new newspaper right there. Out of habit, it's just there. Don't ask me why. It's just bought every week. Nobody reads it. Buying habits. Now, these are why consumers may act irrational. They do not, sometimes do not get the maximum benefit. But do producers sometimes? Yes. Some producers are for charitable causes, global organizations that go for charitable causes. Like if you take the country of Sri Lanka, there's an organization called Embark that helps dogs. A very charitable organization there. Sometimes producers, they do not care about profits. They're like, you know what? I want my employees to be happy. Employee satisfaction. It's all right. Maybe I'm getting less profits. Fine. My employees are happy. And third one, customer satisfaction. Sometimes you go the extra mile to give them something extra just to keep them happy. Even though the profits may fall, you may not get as much profits because you give them a lot, loads of extra. You're like, you know what? It's fine. At least my customers are happy. So these are the economic assumptions that one can make. So the very basics. Now to go into a concept called demand and supply. So let's start off with demand. Look at the definition here. Now you'll need to kind of memorize this definition just a tad bit because this is a very technical bit and they might ask you in the papers for some definitions. It's a willingness, two words here, willingness and ability. Now you need to have the will and the ability to buy a product at a given price because a lot of us have a willingness to like, oh, I want a Harley Davidson. I want a PlayStation 5. All right, I want it, but great. Do I have the money to buy it? If you don't have the money to buy it, that's not demand. Demand is a willingness and the ability of consumers to buy a product at a given price. Now, the demand curve is forever downward sloping. There's a reason for this. Now, I told you just in the previous slide, I said that what consumers want, we want a reasonable low price. So we'll buy more if the prices are low. So as you can see, when it shifts from 100 to 50, we buy more. 80, not 80 people buy it, 150 people buy. This is called an extension of demand. Yeah. The other way around, if you raise your price, demand will fall. This is called a contraction of demand. Now, this is called a movement along the demand curve. Remember, if the demand curve, there's a movement, it's only caused by a change in price. Remember, the curve will not shift if it's just a change in price. It'll cause a movement. But any other factor that affects demand will shift the curve. Now, in this case, look carefully. The price did not change. Here you can see the price change from 100 to 50, yeah? Here the price is at 100, yet the demand was 80, now it's 150. Why did the demand increase or decrease? Either way, why did it change? Even though the price didn't change. This is a shift in the demand curve and we learned some reasons here. This is, so you have a few different reasons. Maybe your income went up, now you're buying more, demand is rising. Maybe there's a trend for some things. Some time ago, there was a trend of buying fidget spinners. Everyone wanted fidget spinners. It was an in thing. People just bought it. I don't understand why. Advertising, a nice advertising campaign. You fell for it. You bought it. High demand. Demographics. What about population? Population, more people came into the country. Okay. Maybe demographic changes, population changes. So more women are working now. There's higher demand for clothing, women's attire. Price of substitutes. Let's say, for example, we're selling Coke and the price of Pepsi goes up. Because the price of Pepsi goes up, all Pepsi's customers come to Coke now. And we, Coke, see our demand curve shifting outwards. And of course, price of complements. Now, complements are joint goods. Car and petrol, for example. If the price of petrol goes up, I'm not buying a car. I'll reduce my demand for the car will fall. And if the price of petrol goes down, I'll buy a car because I can run the car. What's the point of me buying a car and parking it at home because I can't afford petrol? So these are joint goods, price of complements. Now, these are little things that you can keep in mind. What about supply? Now, supply is about the suppliers because demand was about the producer. Demand was about the consumers. Supply is about the suppliers or producers. Now, the willingness and ability of producers to sell a product at a given price. Just like we saw for demand, except this is not downward sloping, it's upward sloping. What's the relationship there? I told you just 2 slides before this that producers want to charge the highest price to consumers. They want a higher price. So higher the price, the more the producers are willing to sell at. They're like, okay, high price means high profits. So I'm going to sell it at a higher price. So the price goes up, there will be an extension of supply. If the price goes down, there'll be a contraction of supply. And all these movements are caused by none other than price. But just like I showed you before, Will suppliers supply more even if the price does not change? Yes, they will. For what reason though? Why would they supply more even if the price doesn't change? These are caused by a few factors here. So look at this. The first one, cost of production. If the cost of production falls, now we know, okay, it's very cheap. We can start up a restaurant. Prices of chicken and meat and all of that are falling. So we can start up a bit of a restaurant really fast because the cost of production are falling. Supply will increase. The very next, weather conditions. This is especially true for agricultural products because agricultural products will be affected by natural factors or weather conditions, and if it's favorable weather conditions, then yes, supply will increase. But if it was not favorable, for example, a flood, a drought, any of that can cause supply to fall. So then you get subsidies. Now, subsidies is the government grant. If you haven't heard of this word before, this is money given by the government. Some of the government would say, you know what? I like what you're doing. You're making rice. It's good for society. People will buy. I'll give you a subsidy, grow it, and maybe, make it cheaper for customers. So because of that, you start to increase supply. Technology. If you take technology like robots, they can produce faster. Put a robotic arm. Why are you getting someone to spray paint your car like this, one by one, making mistakes and whatnot? Put a robotic arm. Let the robotic arm spray your car. Yeah. So technology, productivity, better education and training, so you can supply more. Maybe you learned new techniques because you went to school, you did a degree, you did a master's. Now you know how to produce better. Productivity will happen and you can supply more. And finally, indirect taxes. Indirect taxes are taxes on goods and services. If you go to a restaurant and at the bottom of the bill, you see a little thing called VAT, VAT. That is an indirect tax. So that, well, it discourages producers to produce because you know what? If you put a VAT, the profits will fall because now you're charging the customer some more money. They will also not come and buy anymore. Profits will fall, so then the supply will fall. So all these factors here can affect your supply curve. Remember though, guys, right is good. Right means an increase. Even for demand, right means good, an increase. Left means bad, a decrease. Yeah. So keep that in mind as you go forward. Now, this is a bit of a, well, I've drawn a lot here, so I'm just going to draw over this and show you. We have our initial demand curve. We have our initial supply curve. The middle point where they intersect is called our equilibrium point. This is the equilibrium point. Put it in another color and use a dotted line. So equilibrium point. This is where demand and supply meet. It means that consumers and supplier agree on the market price. In this case, 750 bucks. 100 people are buying for 750 bucks. But this is called equilibrium. What does disequilibrium mean? Disequilibrium means we know that the market price is 750, but we go and charge a higher price. At this higher price of 1,000, you can see where it touches the demand curve. How many people? 50 people. Only 50 people demand this good. And where it touches the supply curve, because the price is high, suppliers will supply more. There'll be 200 people supplying. You know what happens? Price is too high. 200 suppliers, but only 50 customers. There's excess supply. There's too many suppliers now. Here's another scenario. I'm wiping that out. What happens if we reduce the price from 750? See where it touches the demand curve? 150 people. See where it touches the supply curve? Because the price fell, supply like, I don't want to supply, only 75. So the price is too low. 150 customers, but only 75 suppliers. That means there's an excess demand. In other words, an excess demand is called a shortage. There's a shortage of goods now because price too low, suppliers not willing to supply. Consumers are like, wow, this is cheap, I want to buy. So more people buying, less people supplying. There's excess demand or a shortage. Anything that's not at the equilibrium point is called disequilibrium and is shown here. Can the supply curve shift? Can the demand curve shift? Yes, they can. Yeah. Demand curve can shift inwards or outwards. Supply curve can shift inwards or outwards. Remember, if you show both the shifts in a diagram, show the original point, which is demand and supply, and show the final one, which is supply 1 and demand 1. Okay, supply 1 and demand 1. So this is the original and the final one. So you can show the changes there. Again, one more time, just to keep in mind, right side shift for either of the curve, demand or supply, means an increase. A left side shift indicates a decrease. Yeah. Let's move on. We're learning the concept of price elasticity of demand. This is often a concept that is confused by a lot of people. So let's try to take it a little slower here. Price elasticity of demand is the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in price. But is it fair to say, if I cut the word responsiveness and said reaction instead, fair to say, similar word. And if I cut the word quantity demanded and say customers, because customers are the ones who demand, yeah? Now I'm going to read this definition again. The reaction of customers when I change my price. So the reaction of customers when I change my price. How will my customers react if I raise my price? Now I want to figure it out before I can raise my price. Will they all leave me? Will some of them leave me? Will nobody leave me? Will a lot of people leave me? Now let's figure it out. For that, we have an equation which is called, or which goes as percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. Now everyone confuses this. Just keep in mind, easiest way to remember which one goes where. Quantity, no matter what, will always stay at the top. Quantity will always stay at the top. Okay, the other factors can change. Quantity will always stay at the top. Now, if you want to calculate percentage change, now this is not economics here, this is basic mathematics. If you want to calculate percentage change of anything, you use new minus old divided by old into 100. One more time, new minus old over old into 100. So in this case, this is the percentage change of quantity demanded, new QD, quantity demanded, minus old QD divided by old QD into 100. Do the same thing for price, new price minus old price over old price into 100. Once you do that calculation, you'll be able to arrive at an answer. So if you want to pause this and try this, so I've shown that there is an old price and a new price. There is an old quantity and a new quantity. Try doing it. So put the new minus old over old into 100 in this equation for this one and for this one, and see if you can get the final PED answer. And I believe this is the answer. Check and see if you arrive at the answer, or if it's different, check the calculations. Now, let's move forward, guys. When it comes to PED, let's say we have got minus 3.5. Remember that PED will forever be a minus figure. PED will never be positive. This is because of the inverse relationship of demand. Negative indicates an inverse relationship. So if I'm going back to my demand curve, you can see that if the price goes down, this goes up. If this goes down, price or rather, if price goes up, this goes down. It's an opposite direction. So it's a negative relationship. It's an inverse relationship, in which case you see this is why PED will forever be negative. But for the moment, guys, let's ignore the sign when we're interpreting it, ignore the sign, the minus sign. Now, when you write your answer, you always write the minus sign or you lose your marks. But when you're interpreting it, just ignore the sign in your head. Just try to figure out what it is, okay? If it lands, well, there's few things you need to know, okay? This is a scale here. If it is, it can be either 0, 1, infinity, or it can be between 1 and infinity, or it can be between 0 and unitary. So in other words, it can be below 1 or above 1. It can be 0, 1, or infinity. So let's see where this lands. In this case, guys, the answer 3.5, now that we're ignoring this minus sign, 3.5 is above 1. Above 1 would indicate that it is elastic. If it's below 1, it would indicate that it's inelastic. Okay? And if it's infinity, we call it perfectly elastic, which is unrealistic. There's no such figure as infinity. And perfectly inelastic would mean 0. Yeah? And unitary would mean 1. Now, great. So we know the figures for each thing, but what do they mean? People just memorize this and they have no idea what it means. So if I were to tell you what it means, Now, we changed our price by 3.5. Okay. We change our price by 3.5. Or rather, let's put it a different way. We're not changing our price by 3.5. For every 1%, for every 1% that we raise our price, for every 1% that we raise our price, how many customers would leave us? Now, it's a minus figure, so customers would leave us. Is it less than 1%? So we raise our price by, let's say 100 rupees or 100%. Less than 100% of customers leave us. Not many, few people are leaving us. So it's okay. Or is it more than one? That means by every 1% change in price, every time we raise the price by 1%, people leave us, in this case, by 3.5%. That's a lot of customers leaving. Yeah. If it's exactly one, that means it's unitary, which means that for every time we raise our price by 1%, customers leave us by 1%. And then you have perfectly inelastic. It's a bit unrealistic, guys. When we raise our price, no one leaves us. Everyone continues to buy. A little unrealistic there. And finally, infinity. When it comes to infinity, that means that if you raise your price by 1%, everyone leaves you. So if I were to tell you guys, the most realistic ones is not this, is not this, is not this either. In fact, the only two realistic ones is elastic and inelastic. Now that we know those figures, let's try to map it out to diagrams here, okay? Perfectly inelastic, you see the lines flat like this. We're raising our price by 1%. The quantity demanded changes by 0%. Can you see? 0. Okay, that's perfectly inelastic. Inelastic curve looks like this, slope like this. We're changing our price by 1%. If this gap is 1%, guys, this is obviously less than 1%, yeah? Can you see that the price change here is less than 1%? So less than 1%, inelastic, like I said, below 1. Now, unitary, very difficult to draw exactly like this. So when we change our price by 1%, quantity changes by 1%. Look at the gap, same size, 1%, 1%. This is unitary, 1 exactly. Then we have elastic, which looks like this, guys. If we change our price by 1%, if we change our price by 1%, more than 1% of customers would change. More than 1%. Yeah, that's why it looks like this. And finally, infinity. Before we can even change our price, or even if we change our price, this goes on. Parallel curves never meet, yeah? So it'll go on till infinity, and we'll lose all our customers. Now, what do you do with price? Now we figure this out. Okay, we know what the curves look like. We know what the numbers are. We know how to calculate it. We know the definition. We know how to interpret it. But what else do we need to know? We need to know the factors affecting elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand, we want to see with inelastic. Like I told you in the previous slide, inelastic means even if you raise your price. Now look at this carefully. You raise your price by 1%, less than 1% leave you, very small amount. So if that's the case, guys, if that's the case, what makes our goods inelastic? First one here, addictiveness. Now I've given some examples here, okay? Cigarettes are addictive. No matter how much they raise the price, people continue to buy it. Maybe a small proportion stop, but majority continue to buy it. So the degree of addictiveness, the more addictive, the more inelastic. The less addictive, elastic. Brand loyalty. We all know the Apple fans out there. No matter how much Apple raises their prices, well, these Apple fans continuously go and buy it. Yeah, brand loyalty. Necessities. Necessities are like bread and rice. We want bread, we want rice. I don't know, depends on which country you live in, sandwiches. So The more it is a necessity, the more inelastic it is, because no matter what the price goes up, you're going to continue buying. And the next thing, lower price goods, small proportion of your income. Tic Tac, let's say. I wonder if Tic Tac's in your country. It's a small little mint. It's so low valued. Or let's even take toffees, and if it's not Tic Tac. You just pick it up from the supermarket shelf and drop it in your basket. You don't even look at the price. Why? It's so low valued. Even if they increase their price, a toffee, let's say it's 50 cents. If they increase it from 50 cents to 60 cents, that means they raise the price, you still won't care. You'll just continue to buy it. Low valued goods becomes inelastic. Even if they raise their price, you won't care. Such small, it's an ant bite to the income that you're getting. And finally, urgency, time. They know for a fact, airlines, they know for a fact that you're urgent to go. If you ever buy a ticket last minute, know that you're paying a higher price than the person who bought it 3 months ago. You and that person may be seated right next to each other, yet he paid a lower price and you paid a higher price because you bought it last minute. So the more urgent it is, the more inelastic it is, the more, well, not so urgent, it becomes elastic. So if you are a producer and you know your goods are inelastic, raise your price, guys, because people will continue to buy. That way your total revenue will rise. If you know that's elastic, you know that people are going to leave you if you raise your price, reduce the price in that case. When you do reduce the price, a lot of customers will come in, the total revenue will still rise. A lot of more customers will come in to buy. So these are factors affecting price elasticity of demand. But is there something called price elasticity of supply? Yes. Very similar concept of price elasticity of demand. We're going to repeat some of the questions here, some of the concepts here, but responsiveness of quantity supplied to a change in price. So if I cut the word responsiveness and said reaction, if I cut the word quantity supplied and said producers, because producers are the ones who supply, I'm going to reread this thing and say the reaction of a producer when the price changes. Will they continue to supply? Will they stop supplying? Will a lot of people come into the market and supply? Will not so many people stop supplying? How do we calculate this? Percentage change in quantity supplied over percentage change in price. Yeah, small typo there. So remember, I told you the equation, no matter what equation you're using, quantity will always stay on top. So do not confuse it. Quantity will forever be on top. Now, in that sense, guys, you have new quantity supplied. So now you want to find percentage change. Same thing of the previous one. Percentage change is found new minus old over old into 100. New quantity minus old quantity over old quantity into 100. New price minus old price over old price into 100. When you do that, guys, remember that PES will forever be a positive answer. We said PED will be negative, right? PES will be positive. Now I'm going back a few slides here. I'm going to supply. I told you supply here. Now supply is a positive relationship. Because when the price goes up, this goes up. Quantity goes up. When the price goes down, this goes down. Same directional relationship. Unlike demand, it's opposite direction. So that being said, because it's a positive relationship, PED will forever be positive. Now, this elastic, inelastic, unitary, all that is the same thing. 0 is perfectly inelastic, infinity is perfectly elastic, so on and so forth. Same as the last slide. Okay. Even the diagrams look very similar. Perfectly inelastic, straight. Why? You raise the price by 1%, 0% change. Perfectly elastic, also identical to the demand curve. The demand is perfectly elastic. Demand curve, perfectly supply curve, identical. Infinity. You change your price and all suppliers will stop supplying. Inelastic, very similar, guys. Very, very similar to the demand curve. The demand curve was downward sloping and look like this. Yeah. This is upward sloping, so it looks like this. So it's an upward sloping curve here. You have the inelastic curve, which means the price goes up by 1%. A small amount of producers will increase. Not many producers will increase. Even though the price goes up, not many will increase. Here it's elastic. goes up by 1%, price goes up 1%, a lot of people will increase supply. And then you have unitary. Now in demand, unitary looks like this, but this is not the case. Unitary is a 45-degree line from the axis. That means if there's exactly 1% rise, there'll be an exact 1% rise in the quantity as well. Now 1:1 change. Same as the previous one, just that the curves look slightly different. The rest of them are all the same. Now what affects the price elasticity of supply? Now PES is the responsiveness of producers, right? So let's see when they can be responsive. Let's see when they can't be responsive. So if it's inelastic, it means they have a very slow reaction. They can't respond. Look at this example I've given you. Look at the ones in green here. Time factor. So if they do have time to respond, it'll be elastic. If they don't have time to respond, if it takes long time to respond, that means it's inelastic. Agricultural goods, it takes time to grow. So they become very inelastic. Manufactured goods, you can keep the workers working overnight and you can start making more goods. For example, iPhones. Stock rather. Can you keep an inventory of stuff? Meaning, can you stock up iPhones? Yes, elastic, so you can respond very fast. Can you stock up tomatoes and milk? You can't. They're perishable goods, so it's inelastic. Then, spare capacity. Do we have extra capacity? If it's a farmer and he has no extra capacity, no extra growing space, inelastic. You ask for more goods and he'll be like, sorry, I can't give you goods, no space. But a factory, maybe you can run overnight, becomes more elastic, faster reaction. Finally, factor substitution. In this case, the farmer, if you take tomatoes, or let's say something that grows on the ground, carrots, okay? What do you need to grow carrots? You need water, soil, sunlight, fertilizer, the seed, and farmers, tools. If you want to change, you see the prices rising for cabbages, you will quickly switch to cabbages. Why? What do you need to grow cabbages? Same thing. Water, sunlight, fertilizer, soil. The only difference is the seed. The factor substitution is so easy. So you'll substitute. It becomes more elastic because you can react. Phone manufacturers can't. When they're making one model of a phone, they're making that one model of a phone. They have to change the mold. Yeah. If you notice, guys, most of the inelastic stuff are agricultural businesses. Most of the elastic stuff are manufacturing businesses because they can react faster. Agricultural businesses take time to react. Final concept when it comes to elasticity, guys, is called income elasticity of demand. When it comes to income elasticity of demand, this time, guys, we're checking the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in income, not price. Again, we'll cut off the word responsive and call it reaction. Cut off the word quantity demanded, let's call it customers. In other words, the reaction of customers, I have customers, the reaction of my customers when their income changes. When their income changes. How do we calculate this? Same equation, guys. Percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change. Instead of putting price, we say percentage change in income. Remember, I told you, don't get confused. There are multiple now equations, right? Always keep quantity at the top. Quantity should always be at the top. How do we calculate percentage change? Same old thing. New minus old over old into 100. New minus old over old into 100. But there's something you need to know here. When you get your answer, we need to know if it's positive or a negative answer. So we are understanding two variables here. We look at quantity demanded and we look at income. So let's just take those two variables and we'll put it here. Income and the quantity demanded. Look at the red arrow. When people's income goes up, quantity demanded goes up naturally, right? Your income goes up, you buy more. Your income goes down. Look at the black arrow. The income goes down, you buy less. Normal scenario, the arrows are moving the same direction. Income goes up, quantity demand goes up. Income goes down, quantity demanded goes down. So, if it's in the same direction, it's a positive answer. In basic math here, yeah? Plus into plus is plus. Minus into minus is also plus. So if you get the arrows moving in the same direction, it's a positive answer. And if you get a positive answer, guys, when you do this equation, get a positive answer. If the positive answer is above 1, it's considered a luxury good. Like an Uber car. You have some money, you go in an Uber car. If it's a positive and below 1 you take, it's called a normal good. Maybe an Uber tuk, because you can't afford the car. You can afford the tuk. Car is a luxury to you. But what happens if you get a negative answer? Negative answer means the directions are different. That means when your income goes up, you don't buy much. Income goes up, you don't buy much. You reduce your purchases, in fact. And when your income goes down, you buy more of the good. Now, this is pretty inverse. Now, this is not the normal scenario. Why? This is for an inferior good, like the bus. You only take the bus, let's say, if you don't have money because your money is going down. See the black arrow? You demand the bus more. If your money goes up, your income goes up, you won't demand the bus. You go in a car, maybe taxi. Okay. So again, in opposite direction of arrows is a negative answer. Again, basic math, guys. Plus into minus is minus. Minus into plus is also minus, guys. So if the opposite direction arrows, that means it's a negative answer. When income goes up, quantity goes down, vice versa. Now, moving on. We're leaving the elasticity aside. We're learning private sector and public. We're learning the types of economies, okay? You have, let's say, the UK. The UK is what we call a mixed economy. A mixed economy is made of the private sector. Private sector is firms and consumers, producers and consumers. Public sector is called, or public sector is made up of the government, sometimes called the state. But the UK is run by the private sector and the public sector, which means it's a mixed economy, both together. But if you take a country that's only run by firms and consumers, there's minimal government intervention. There's very few things that the government is doing. That's called a free market economy. Only the private sector, mostly the private sector. The closest example I can give to you is the country of Hong Kong. Hong Kong has only 10% government intervention. The rest of the country is run by the private sector. This is the closest example I can give you to the free market economy, which is run by the private sector. On the other extreme, are there countries run only by the government? These are called command or planned economies. Say, for example, North Korea. North Korea is run by the government. The consumers and producers can't do what they want there. There's a whole heap of rules there. Not very favorable rules as well. So it's run by the public sector. So this is called the command economy or the planned economy. It's run only by the public sector, run only by the government, in other words. Let's look at the private sector aims, okay? If you are a private sector business, what is your aim? You want to survive. The first thing, don't close down. You start a business, don't aim for profits. First thing you aim for, don't close down. Let's survive. Then let's aim for profits. Then let's aim for growth. Sometimes we may aim for social responsibility. Let's help society. Yeah. What about the government aims? The government aims are to improve the quality of service. Maybe better public transport. Maybe they want to keep the cost low. Sometimes the government sector has some businesses that look for profit, like the electricity board or the water board. They look for profit because they need to keep themselves running. They're not funded by the government. Now, why do we need the government? Do we really need the government? Why do we need them? When companies grow big, they dominate the market. These are called monopolies. If there is a monopoly, customers get exploited. Now, the government won't watch and wait. They'll jump in and try to increase competition so that we don't get exploited. We, the customer, we don't get exploited. The next thing, environment will be polluted without the government. Firms and consumers, you and I don't care. We only care about ourselves. We're going to pollute the environment. Yeah, we're going to buy an extra car. There's a lot of fumes, greenhouse gases, you name it. Global warming. Government will jump in and stop this from happening. Missing markets. If the government was not around, There will be no street lights, there'll be no police, there'll be no lighthouses. These are called public goods. A little note up here about public goods. Public goods have the characteristics of non-rivalry and non-excludability. Non-excludability is that you can't stop someone from using it. There's a street light in front of my house. I can't tell the person, I'm sorry, don't use it. That's my street light. No, it's not. It's anybody's. You can't stop people from using it. Non-rivalry. I don't have to run there to compete to use it. It's there for everyone. Same with the police. You don't have, there's no rivalry for it. You can't stop people from using the police. Missing markets. These things won't be provided by the private sector because private sector will never give anything for free, right? They won't give a free street light. You and I are not that generous. We're not going to give free street lights. So then what happens? There's a missing market. And if there is a missing market, the government will jump in to provide it. That's why we need the government. Lack of information. Okay. Some consumers may not be aware what they consume. Now, I'm going to try to show you a little thing. You and I may not know. Okay, this is a can. I'm trying to see if it stopped disappearing on my camera. Look at this drink can. There's a little yellow orange dot there. It says on this that orange indicates medium sugar. You and I had no idea what we were drinking. We were drinking sugar, Coke and Pepsi and whatnot. They're all sugar. Now that, because we are unaware, right? We have the lack of information. The government jumps in and made it mandatory for everyone to put this little yellow sticker or a green sticker or a red sticker indicating the sugar levels. If the government didn't come in and do that, we wouldn't know. Lack of information, because not all companies will publish information. You think Coke will come in and say, oh, we've got really high sugar which can cause diabetes, drink our Coke. They're not going to do that. So the government jumps in to warn you, be careful, Coke has a lot of sugar. Yeah. And finally, factor mobility. Labor can't move around easily. They can't. Unless the government jumps in and put in some highway of some sort. Train service, something. The government needs to jump in and make the roadways. Now labor can move from place to place to place to place. They can get jobs. Not only that, the government can also give free education and training so labor can still find a different job. I'm a teacher. Maybe they can train me to become a magician. So that's factor mobility. Yep. These are why we need the government. But are there circumstances where we don't need the government? Should we get rid of the government? This is called privatization. Privatization is the act of selling the company or activity controlled by the government to the private sector. We're selling it to the private sector. Why do we sell it to the private sector? One, to generate revenue. We can make a lot of money by selling our firm to the private sector. Yep. In this case, we need a lot of money. We, the government, need money. We sell it to the private sector. Fine, we get a lot of money to do our other things. The other thing, guys, governments tend to be very inefficient. The public sector has no profit motive. They don't keep profits in mind. They don't care about being efficient. So isn't it best that we let the private sector run it? Because private sector wants profits, yeah? So they'll try to make better quality, be more innovative, come up with something nice. Consumers get choice. Sometimes the government has controlling all the whole country's resources and the company, yeah? So it's too large to handle. Little typo there, it's too large to handle. So they sell part of it off to the private sector. Maybe the trade service. Maybe I'll give you from this sector to that sector, private sector, you can run this. And finally, we all know how politicians work. Politicians jump in and interfere, especially during elections, to get what they want from this public sector firms. So better to get rid of that. So stop these politicians from intervening. That way you privatize, let the private sector handle this. How do you privatize though? One, you can sell the organization to the private sector, finish. Two, you can sell the land or the assets to the private sector. Third one, you can contract out. You can tell them, okay, like I gave you the example of a train service. Don't give the whole train service. You can say, look, you know what? For the next 5 years, I'm allowing you to take this train service, this stretch from point A to point B. You can handle the private sector for a period of time. You're contracting out. What are the benefits of privatization? Well, when you privatize, companies take over, they start to innovate and make more stuff, and they are profit motivated to produce more jobs are created. Businesses find more competition, and when there's more competition, they become more innovative. The government gets more revenue. I told you they can generate revenue, so that means they can invest in other areas. And customers may get better quality and innovative goods. So good. What are the drawbacks of privatization? You know those unprofitable services? Let's say the post office. Who uses post anymore? Very rare that post is being used. If you want to send a post to any part of your country, you can send it because the government is operating it. The moment you give it to the private sector, you can't. No longer. You cannot. Yeah. Reason behind this is simply because they will stop all the services in the areas of post where it makes no money. Consumer choices will fall. In fact, because the private sector took it over, they might invest in technology. That means they need less workers to do their jobs. Yeah. So the privatized firm, because they become more efficient and use technology, they'll say, you know, the workers, goodbye, we don't need you anymore. Unemployment will rise. Next thing, if the private sector becomes a monopoly, one large firm, they'll exploit consumers. Yeah. They have no reason to give it cheap to consumers if no other competition is there. The drawbacks of privatization. Now I'm going to teach you about a form of market failure, which is called negative externalities, or sometimes called external cost. Negative externalities are third-party effects. For example, I buy a cigarette from the seller. We are doing the transaction. I start smoking. Yeah, I know I'm harming my lungs. I'm doing something really stupid. I'm harming my lungs. I have to pay for healthcare. I don't know about my lifespan, all that harmful. Okay, I'm doing that to myself, my private cost. Okay. But what about the person standing next to me? What about the children around me? What about people around me? They are breathing the same smoke that I'm smoking out. This is called passive smoking. Now, they are not smoking, but they're breathing the same smoke. The passive smoker is going to also pay for his lungs and all those problems now, respiratory diseases, because of me. They didn't even buy a cigarette. This is the third-party cost. Their cost is a third-party cost. This is called a negative externality, sometimes called external cost. Some examples: noise pollution, air pollution, water pollution, overcrowding, traffic congestion, resource depletion. All these are external costs, cost to the third party. So the external cost, so rather the private cost of smoking, I smoke, my cost, plus the external cost because of that person's paying for his lung damages because of me. When you add both together, it's called the social cost. It's the total cost of society. So now, what can the government do about this? The government can fine no smoking in public, fine for throwing cigarette butts, fine for dumping chemicals in the river. Regulation, no dumping toxic chemicals. Taxes, put a massive tax on a chemical firm or a cigarette firm so that they can't make much profits. They'll stop making. They'll have to raise price. Consumers will stop buying. Yeah. Or now when they get this tax money from cigarettes and all, use it to go and cure, I don't know, cancer or whatever these cigarettes have caused. Give a subsidy, not to the ones harming. The opposite, the ones that are not harming. For example, cars are causing pollution. So go and give a subsidy to an electric car, an electric bike manufacturer. This will reduce the demand for petrol cars or diesel cars. Finally, we have something called a tradable pollution permit. This means that if you want to produce chemicals, you need to go and buy this permit. And if you do go buy this permit, it's really, really expensive, that you'll be discouraged. You'll be like, you know what? I don't want to I don't want this permit anymore because it's too expensive for me and I'm not going to go into the chemical industry. This reduces chemical production, whatever other cigarette production, whatever. So tradable pollution permit. A pollution permit is a permit that you need to buy in order to pollute. Now, when you're making chemicals, you know that you have to pollute. Should you buy this pollution permit? And it's very expensive, so it discourages you. You can also sell this pollution permit to another firm that also encourages you to pollute less, so you can sell it to someone else. Okay, moving on. Positive externalities. Now, this is a negative externality. This is a positive externality. Positive spillover effects from consumer. Now, let's say you and I, we studied hard. I'm doing my PhD. I'm still studying. Because I studied all this while, you look at the amount of things I've studied. It's only because I'm studying here that you are benefiting today. I'm a teacher today. There's a third party. You, the third party, are benefiting because I took up my education. You're getting the external benefit because of me. Yeah. The problem is, guys, it's underconsumed. A lot of people don't study. A lot of people don't take care of themselves or have health care. A lot of people do not even vaccinate. So external benefit is really not, it's underconsumed, which means there's not many external benefits. Yeah. So the private benefit of the person taking the vaccine, me, or the person who took up education, plus the external benefit, you guys who are benefiting off this video, is equal to the social benefit. Yeah. Keep that in mind. Now, we're going on to some easy things. These are called the factors of production. I think you may know this by now. Land, labor, capital, and enterprise, or sometimes entrepreneur. What are the, we know what these are. Land is anything extracted from nature, but what is the return on that? Sometimes we can say, okay, the land, if you have a physical land, we can get rent. Labor, wages. Capital, interest or rent, because man-made stuff like machinery. And enterprise or entrepreneurship, the business person, you can get profits in return for that business. One more thing that you need to learn is sectors of the economy: primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. The primary sector is anything that you extract from nature, like farming, like fishing, like coal mines, and all of that. Secondary sector is when you manufacture something. The manufacturing sector, you take the coal, you take the steel from the primary sector and manufacture a car. It's the secondary sector. The tertiary sector is like me, services, education, I'm teaching you, retail, service sector. Yeah. So normally a developing country, that means something like Sri Lanka, a developing country is going to move from primary to secondary, stopping the agriculture and moving more to manufacturing. This is called industrialization. But the developed countries like the USA, the UK, and whatnot, they have moved away from the secondary and gone into tertiary. Now they're in retail and whatnot. It's called deindustrialization. These are some examples of some services we've given here. Moving on. Division of labor. Division of labor is a concept where you break down a big job into small tasks. You break down one big job into really small tasks, and each worker will be doing one task. For example, building a house, you'll have one person specialized in bricklaying, one person mixing the cement, everyone specialized in architect, all specialized, yeah? Now we need to know the advantages to the business, to the employee, and the disadvantages to the business, to the employee. If you break down the task, guys, you're efficient. You keep doing it repeatedly, on and on and on and on. I'm a specialized economics teacher. I've been teaching students for nearly 10 years now. I've been teaching division of labor for a long, long time. I don't even need my slides on the board. I can just teach you. I can tell you everything off my mind. Why? Because I've done this repeatedly. I become efficient. If I become efficient, let's say the bricklayer in this case become efficient, it's cheaper because they're producing faster. Faster production, you're saving time because they don't move around, they're just doing one task. More output means more profits for the firm. More competitive because you're producing it at a cheaper rate. And workers are specialized, so less mistakes, better quality products, happy customers. What are the drawbacks? What are the drawbacks to the business? When workers get bored, now the bricklayer is laying bricks. Today is laying bricks, tomorrow is laying bricks. For the rest of his time, he's going to lay bricks. He's going to get bored. He's going to get demotivated. The quality will fall. And when employees are specialized, I'm a specialized teacher. If I go work somewhere, I'm going to ask for a really high pay. That means the firm won't get as much profits as they could get. Yeah. Customers may be dissatisfied. Because of the poor quality, because of the boredom and mistakes and quality falling, customers may be dissatisfied. And just imagine this, yeah, the bricklayer, the cement mixer and all that. The bricklayer is waiting till the cement is mixed. Now the cement guy mixing the cement is absent today. And when he is absent today, what does the bricklayer do now? He can't do his work. The whole production process is stopped because just that one person is missing. Everything's at a halt. What about the employee though? Does the employee benefit? Yes, the work becomes smaller tasks. They become specialized, they become motivated. Oh, I'm satisfied now because now I'm a specialized teacher. Workers become skilled, they can demand a higher pay. You can easily get a job, a better job from a competitor. I can go over to a competitor and ask, can you give me a job? Give me a higher pay. Disadvantages to the employee. Maybe you're bored of doing the task over and over again. Why do I even work this job if I'm going to do this over and over again? Pay might be lower. Yeah, because now I'm doing a smaller task. The bricklayer is only doing a small task. He's not doing everything. So they'll be like, you know what? I'm paying you lower because you're doing something smaller. And when workers are specialized, I'm an economics teacher. Tomorrow the world wakes up and say, you know what? We don't want economics anymore. We want biology. We want chemistry. We want physics. What happens to me? What happens to my job? Gone. So when workers are specialized and if the industry changes, the worker won't be able to find a job anywhere. All right. So this is what division of labor is, and this is what you need to know. Now, productivity. Productivity is basically trying to see how much output per unit of input. In other words, there are 100 cars being made. There are only 5 workers. That means how much is each worker making? You take the 100 cars, divide by 5 workers, you get 20 cars per worker. I'm like, okay, the productivity is 20 cars per worker. But how do we improve productivity for land? Now we have resources, land, labor, capital. How do we improve productivity for land? Physical land, have fertilizers and pesticides, have proper drainage systems so the crops can grow better, have GM crops, genetically modified crops so they can grow better, more tastier even. And reclamation, go claim the land. Maybe in Sri Lanka, there's a project going on called Port City. There's a part where they reclaim the land. Reclaim the land from the sea. It was the sea and they built land there. Or the Palm Jumeirah in Dubai. Really nice. Reclaiming the sea, reclaiming land from the sea. How do we improve capital? In the primary sector, we can use watering drones. Instead of farmers carrying bucket after bucket to go water, use a watering drone. Secondary sector, we can use robots. Like I said, why should you hire labor to paint vehicles and make mistakes and all of that? Here you can put in robots, and robots is very accurate, precision painting. And tertiary sector, what can we do? Online banking, online retail, online gaming, robot worker, robot waiters, all of these tertiary sector, how we can improve productivity. All of these are how we can improve productivity. Finally, how do we improve productivity for labor? Pay them higher, give them a piece rate. Now, if you're doing business studies, you can pay them per piece. They'll be motivated, financially motivated. They'll produce more and more and more because they can get per piece. Train them, they can produce better. Improve the layout, maybe the working practices, change the layout of the factory, maybe so that you don't have to keep getting up and go getting your tools. Maybe bring the tools closer. Productivity will rise. Attract high quality workers from abroad, maybe they're highly skilled, maybe they do a better job. And non-financial motivation, give them some sort of motivation like job rotation. maybe teach this, then go teach something else and come back to teaching this and give a bit of a variety so that people don't get bored and they start to get more productive. Yeah. Moving on. Cost, revenue, and profits. Okay. We have something called, we'll look at a cost first. Okay. There's fixed cost, there's total cost, there's variable cost. So for us to get total cost, yeah, for us to get total cost, we need to find our fixed cost and add it to our variable cost. But what is fixed cost? Fixed cost is any cost that does not change with output. No matter how much you produce, the rent won't change. The rent will forever be the same. Salaries, insurances, fixed costs. Which means, guys, if I'll give you an example. If you're at a factory and you close down for a month, just a month, you're going on holiday. What are the costs that you're still paying? Rent, salaries, insurance. You still have to pay this. Just because you went on a month's holiday, you can't tell your workers, I'm not paying you this month. Unless they're daily wages, but if they're monthly salaried employees, you can't tell them that. Variable costs, on the other hand, are the costs that change with output. Only when you produce, you'll incur this cost. Materials, packaging, transport, daily wages, all these are variable costs. So you add your variable costs and your fixed costs, you get your total cost. Little definitions given here. Let's look at these curves before we come to this section, okay? Fixed cost, like I said, rent, say $100,000. Fixed cost. It's fixed. It will not change whether your output is increasing or not. The cost will not change. Variable cost, only when you produce, only when the output increases, the cost increases. So it's starting from zero. And since we're adding our fixed cost to a variable cost, we're starting the total cost from the fixed cost line and going upwards because this is parallel to the variable cost. It's only increasing by the amount of the fixed cost. That's what the total cost looks like. One more cost that we need to learn is average cost. Average cost is the cost per unit. Yeah, I want to see how much is the cost per unit. Total cost divided by output, we get what we call the average cost. How do we find total revenue? This is the total amount of money that the business gains, the sales, in other words. Total revenue is found by multiplying price into quantity. You're making brownies and you're selling. How many brownies did you sell? 10 brownies. How much brownies is it? How much is one brownie? $10. 10 brownies into $10 is $100 is your total revenue. How do you find profit though? Profit, you take your total revenue. You sold all the brownies, you have $100. Your cost, you take your total cost after adding all this cost, your cost is $70. So total revenue minus total cost, that is 100 minus 70, you get $30. This is profit. Cost, revenue, and profit. Now for another important concept, this is called economies of scale. Economies of scale is the average cost falling as our output increases. When we produce more, our cost per unit is falling. Let's say, for example, we make water bottles. We're making water bottles. The more we produce water bottles, the cost of water bottles fall. If you make one water bottle, it costs 500. But the more water bottles, that means each water bottle is now fallen down to 300. How did that happen? This is called economies of scale. Let's find out how it happens. Few different types of economies of scale. Purchasing. Now we're making water bottles, we're buying the plastic and all the raw materials. Yeah, this costs money. So when we buy in bulk, when we buy in huge stocks, they give us discounts. When they do give us discounts, the cost per unit will fall. Another one, managerial. Let's say we employ a very specialist, skilled manager. Now that we're growing big, we can afford a skilled manager. They'll help you to cut down costs. They'll reorganize production. They'll do something really well that the cost per unit will fall. Marketing economies of scale. Earlier, we were delivering just one bottle of water. We're paying for delivery, 250 rupees per delivery. We're going to deliver one bottle of water. $250 for it. Yeah. Now, same delivery cost, 250, but we're sending 10 cases of water. Now the 250 is being split by all those water cans or water bottles. The cost per unit is falling. Technical economies of scale. Earlier, we were getting, for example, human beings. labor to fill the water bottles manually. Now you can implement a whole machinery system where everything is automated, so it's producing at a faster rate, less mistakes, less labor. The cost per unit will fall. Labor is expensive, guys. So is capital, yes, but capital is a one-time cost. Labor is a forever cost. So overall, the cost will fall. Financial economies are like interest rate. When you grow big, you can negotiate interest rates with banks. When you grow big and you take a massive loan, you can tell the bank, you know what? Give me a cheaper interest rate. Because if you don't give me a cheaper interest rate and I'm taking a massive loan, I'll just take it to some other bank and I'm going to get a better price. And they'll be like, you know what? No, sir, I'll give you a cheaper rate. Financial economies. Note that all these are happening only because you're growing. And the next one, risk bearing. Ever heard of the phrase, don't put all your eggs in one basket? Because if that basket were to drop, all eggs will break. It's very risky. Spread your risk. Risk is cost. Spread your risk. Yeah. Now, this is what the economies of scale diagram is. On one axis, you have cost. On the other axis, you have output. I told you, as you produce more, you're producing from 50 to 200. When you produce more, your cost of the water bottle went from 500 to, let's say, 100. Yeah, because we're producing more, we're getting discounts and whatnot. Cost went down per bottle. There's a small problem here. There's something called diseconomies of scale. What is that? Now we said we produce from 50 to 200, but what if you produce from 200 to 1000 bottles of water? Cost per unit is going to rise. How is that possible? Going from 100 back to 300. Why is that happening? Now, this is what I like to say, CCCBM. There's a little acronym, 3 C's BM. When you grow too large, average cost rise because it's too large to control, difficult to control. People are making mistakes, wrong communication, wrong orders given, wrong things made, difficult to coordinate. You're in different countries, different time zones. Very hard. Costs will rise. Next thing, bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is paperwork, administration. Bureaucracy means that when you grow large, guys, a lot of paperwork, a lot of administration will fall in place. You can't help it. The more you grow, the more this will happen. And finally, poor motivation. Motivation will be poor because now you're so large, the boss doesn't even know your name. You're like employee so far away, the boss sees you and he'll just even ignore you because he doesn't know who you are. He may not even know you're working for the firm. So you kind of get demotivated when it's too big. Yeah, you're motivated when it's small. This is the concept of economies of scale and diseconomies of scale. There's something called external economies of scale. This is when your average cost reduces. Earlier, we saw the average cost reducing because we increased our output. Now we're not increasing our output. Our output is 50. This is output and this is cost. Our output is 50, yet it has fallen. The cost has fallen from 500 to 250. Why is that? We didn't grow, no. We're not buying in bulk. There's nothing, but the cost is falling. This is because the industry is expanding. Industry is expanding. Maybe the government put up a nice highway. Costs are reduced for transport. Maybe all the skilled labor is coming to the area. Cheaper to recruit labor. Maybe there's a lot of specialized area with competitors. It's good because everyone now knows if you want to buy chocolates, it's in Switzerland in this town. You want to buy tech parts, you go to Silicon Valley. It's all specialized. All the customers come together to this one place because all the suppliers are here in one place. You don't have to advertise. People just walk in. Less cost. Finally, suppliers move closer. So instead of paying transport all the time, your suppliers are now closer. So as a result, your costs start to fall. Yep. Now note that you did not increase your output, but your cost still fell. Next one, competitive markets. Competitive markets are where there are low barriers to entry, where people can just enter the market very easy. Barriers to entry are anything that block you from entering the market. Maybe you need a lot of machinery and whatnot. No barriers to entry. People can easily enter. There are closed substitutes. There's a large number of buyers and sellers. There's no control over the price charged. That means all the buyers and sellers can just sell it at these prices, at the market price, because buyers and sellers can't control the price. And finally, free flow of information. Everyone knows how much and where to buy and what to buy. These are characteristics of a competitive market. A lot of competition, in other words. What would happen to a firm if there's a competitive market? Firms will try to be efficient. They'll try to keep their costs low because they need to keep their price low so that they're competitive. Problem is product quality, or rather benefit is product quality will increase because you try to differentiate. What does this word mean? You try to make your product slightly different from competitors or a lot different from competitors so you get all the customers. And also innovate, constantly update, improve your products to gain more customers. This is what competition can do to firms. What can competition do to consumers? You get more choice, lower cost product, because so many producers there. Innovation, you can argue that innovation will fall because firms need money to innovate, and because of competition, everyone's earning little, so they don't have money. You can argue that there's higher quality on your goods because you can argue there's innovation, like we said. We said no innovation here, but we also innovation there, both evaluation argument and a forward argument. And uncertainty. Firms cannot survive in the market. Sometimes they may leave because of high competition. That means consumers lose their choice. How does a competitive market affect an economy? Resources are not wasted. Why? Because you're efficient. The whole economy is innovative. More people have jobs because more competition. Standard of living will rise. Everyone will have a really good standard of living. Next, impacts of a competitive market on the economy, the bad side, okay? If firms start to leave the market because there's too much competition, employment will fall. Innovation is good, but innovation is more technology. More technology, more machine. More machines, less labor. Why should we use labor if we're using more machines? That means more people unemployed. And finally, because of a lot of competition, guys, if you've seen certain streets, if you've seen the streets of Hong Kong, there's light boards everywhere of advertising. What a waste of money. Just advertising and advertising and advertising. Here's a little stat for you. Coke spends $4 billion every year just advertising. The advertising cost is $4 billion a year. It's a lot of money, guys. You can get a whole city out of poverty just by this one firm. What a waste of money on advertising. All right. So now close to competitive markets, we're going to look at large firms and small firms. Small firms, not small firms, large firms dominate the market. They get large scale contracts. They also have economies of scale. These are good things about the large firms. We learn for economies of scale, lower cost. What drawback to large firm? Bureaucracy. A lot of paperwork because the firm is large. Poor coordination, poor control. All these are diseconomies of scale that we discussed. Poor motivation. The firm is too large. People are like, you know what? Boss doesn't even know me. What about small firms? What are the advantages? Better control over the firm because you know what's happening. You can see everything. You're the boss. You can see everything. Better communication with your workers. Personal service. All the customers know you personally. Be like, hi, how are you? And I'm the owner. And you talk to them, have a chat. You give them better service. Wages are cheaper because small firms can attract cheaper labor. Flexibility is improved because you're a small firm. You don't have machinery and all those things. You want to change your product, you can change your product really quick. And normally, guys, there is more innovation. There is a lot of innovation, yeah? Because small firms tend to be very innovative. Okay. Now, what's the drawback though? The drawback of small firms are that, well, they have a small market share. They have a small market share. They don't have money to grow because they have lack of finance. They can't attract good quality staff because staff is, you have only the lower quality staff because the good quality staff will probably not come to a small firm, no? If you ask me to go work in a small firm, think about it, maybe not. Yeah. then costs may be higher because we learned about economies of scale. There is no large scale contracts. So maybe they won't get economies of scale because they have very small contracts. And difficult to survive. Difficult to survive because markets can be really vulnerable. And if markets are really, really vulnerable, small firms may not be able to survive. Large firms can. Large firms can. This is a little scale that shows you the difference between a micro firm, small firm, medium firm, and large firm based on their turnover, the number of employees, and the balance sheet total. So little things that you can go through. Now, leaving that topic and moving forward, what are the factors that influence growth? How can you grow? Can a small firm grow? Yes. What influences that? Access to finance. Do they have money? Is there a desire to take over competitors? Is there a desire to spread risk? Then what else can we say? We can also talk about economies of scale. Sometimes they're motivated to go and reduce the average cost. So they try it because they want to make more profits. And also maybe government regulation. They stop firms from becoming too large. Sometimes you can't grow because the government's like, you know what, you're too large. I'm afraid if you grow any larger, you're going to exploit customers. I'm going to stop you from growing. They have the right to do so. But sometimes, guys, small firms, they choose to remain small. Maybe they can't grow, or maybe they just don't want to grow. Maybe sometimes the size of the market is small. What if you're a big fish in a small pond? The pond is so small. How much more can you grow? Such a small market. Yeah. Lack of finance. Lack of finance. Maybe you don't have the money to grow. Maybe you're afraid. Now, we learned economies of scale, but we also learned diseconomies of scale. They're afraid that if you grow too much, the average cost can start to rise and they'll gain diseconomies of scale. As a result, you don't want to grow. Maybe it's just the aim of the owner. Yeah, maybe it's just the aim of the owner. No, the owner, even at some point in time when I had my business, I was just like, I had a little business. My little business was teaching students a long time ago. When I first started, I stayed at home. I took only about 5, 6, 7 students every week. More than enough for me. I charged them a little amount. And then I started to just live the life that way. I'm like, you know what? That's nice. Nice life. Just teach once or twice a week, earn a decent amount of money, go out at night, pay my bills. Okay, I don't want to grow. What's all this stress about and getting a building and hiring staff? I don't want all that. This was a long time ago. I came far from that place, but that was my aim at some point in my life, 10 years ago. And nature of the market. Maybe the market is so highly competitive, or the market is a niche. It's a small market that you can't grow as much. A niche market is a smaller market within a larger market. Yep. A niche market may be particular medical products. Not everyone would buy those medical products. Yeah. So you can't sell much, you can't grow much. Not all the medical products, maybe something very specialized, diabetic machinery or something like that. Now, we're moving on to monopolies and oligopolies. We're going to do both these chapters in one go. Now, you see the big word Google there. Google is a monopoly. A monopoly is one firm that dominates a market. Features of a monopoly means that there is one firm dominating the market. They sell a unique product. Consumers generally have no choice. They're the price makers. They set the market price. There's a lot of barriers to entry. You think you can go and compete with Google or Coke? No chance. Yeah. Google owns over 90% of the market share for search engines. How on earth are you going to compete with them? You can't. These are features. Advantages, though, efficiency. Yeah. It's good because Google is now Google has so many things. Google Maps, Google, all of it. They're efficient because they have the money to stay efficient. They're big. They're dominating the market. Innovation, they're innovating in so many different ways. Google, economies of scale, because they can get a lot of things in bulk and they can get a lot of things cheaper. If they get a lot of things cheaper, they can pass on that cost to customers and say, you know what, we got this cheaper, so we're reducing the price for you. The drawbacks, though, higher prices, because they're the only suppliers, so customers have no choice. You have to pay a higher price. Low variety of goods because not much competition, not much innovation. Of course, Google has, but in a market where there is a monopoly, they have no incentive to innovate. Why should they do it? They're the only firm supplying, they'll forever make profits. What's the point of wasting on innovation? Sometimes you can say they're inefficient because they're so large and earning so much. They don't care about rising costs. They'll be like, yeah, whatever. I have so much money. Yeah. Here are some examples of barriers to entry given and some definitions given here. What's an oligopoly? An oligopoly is a market dominated by few large firms. Here's some examples of different countries. But here's a global example. A smartphone industry, Apple, Samsung, Huawei, and Oppo. This is an oligopoly. What are the features of an oligopoly? There are few large firms. Large firms dominate the market. Barriers to entry. Now, not very easy to get into the smartphone market. There are loads of people who are in this market. Differentiated products. Products are all differentiated. You can see Apple to Samsung to Huawei to Oppo. They have all differentiated products. Non-price competition. They try to avoid a price war. You know, if all these four companies try to go battling against price, they can kill each other. So they try not to go on a price war. They go a non-price competition. Apple's go with this whole premium vibe. Samsung goes with features. Oppo, Huawei actually goes with a lot of features. Samsung goes with good quality cameras. I don't know, some way or the other, they go with non-price competition. And as such, guys, the prices are generally very stable. It doesn't fluctuate all the time. And sometimes there's collusion. Collusion is where firms get together and work and say, you know what? Let's exploit the customer. Let's raise the price. Let's all work together. Just imagine if your data services, data providers, they work together and say, let's raise the price of data because we can exploit the customer. That's a bad thing, yeah? But they work together generally. What are the advantages of an oligopoly? There's choice. There's high quality. Look at the phone market, high quality, a lot of choice. If there was a price war and they were battling each other, we customers can get a lower price. There's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of economies of scale, all good stuff. Drawback, because there's only few competitors and not much, consumers will lose out. Higher prices and less choice. Consumers disbenefit if there is collusion. If they work together and they collude, consumers will not benefit. Then, so little words that you can see here: cartel, interdependence. In a oligopoly market, guys, you're very interdependent. When I say interdependent, every firm is watching each other. Did Samsung release a new phone? Did Apple release a new phone? Do I have to release a new phone? What do I do? What features did they release? They're interdependent. We're watching each other. They reduce their price. Should we reduce our price? Interdependence. Cartel is where there's a group of firms who agree the pricing. So when I said collusion, when firms collude, they become a cartel. Off we go. Last few areas. The labor market. Demand for labor, supply of labor. Demand for labor is determined by a few things. You only demand labor if you demand the product. Now, all of you listening to this here today, you're demanding my services to teach you. You're not here to learn economics for the fun of it, are you? Oh, economics is such a nice subject. Oh, for the joy of it, I'm trying to listen to an economics lecture. No, you're not here for that. Why are you here? Why are you listening to this video? Why are you looking at it? There is an exam. There's an Edexcel or a Cambridge exam waiting for you. And only because of that you're here. Do you see that the demand for Edexcel and Cambridge determines my demand? If there's no demand for that, there's no demand for me. Next thing, productivity. If I'm a really good teacher, getting good A's and whatnot, everyone will want to hire me. Yeah. I have a lot of world prizes behind my name. I have a lot of students who got world prizes, highest in the world. My productivity is really good. The demand for me will be really high. High demand for labor. Availability of substitutes. What happens if there's a lot of substitutes? Some of my students are studying with ChatGPT. They're asking ChatGPT to explain a lot of concepts, which is good. I'm not against it. But I could possibly lose my job, no? So if there's more demand for that, there's less demand for me. And sometimes, guys, there are other employment costs. In the UK, they ask you to pay a national insurance contribution. That means the firm has to pay more costs just to hire me. So, they'll be like, I don't want to hire you. So for all these reasons, they'll either hire you or not hire you. This is the demand for labor. The demand for labor is just a downward sloping curve like the normal demand curve. Derived demand, like I explained to you. Supply of labor, what determines the supply of labor? The population. More population, more people to work. Migration, that is immigration, people coming in, or emigration, people going out. So migration would indicate that, how would you say it? The more people that's available in our country to work, the more the supply of labor. School leaving age. If your school leaving age is 18, all right, there's so much labor from 18 onwards. But if the government goes and drops that to 16, that means there's even more labor. Retirement age, usually 55. The government goes and raises that to 65, a lot more people available to work. Female participation, think about it, guys. Back in the day, my grandma, she never worked. She was just at home. Neither did my mom work. Now, this generation, everybody's working. All the females are working. The participation of female working is huge, which is good. Yeah. Which means that supply of labor will rise. Age distribution. Are people all young or people old? If they're old, then not much of labor. Aging population. UK has an aging population. I think Japan also has an aging population. People are all old. There's not much of workers. But if there's a younger population like India, then a lot of people available to work. Skills and qualifications. If you need a lot of skills and qualifications, well, then the supply of labor will be less because they'll be like, okay, you want to be a teacher, you have to study this, and then like, yeah, no, maybe not. And finally, labor mobility. This depends. Now, if there was a highway close by, very easy for people to move back and forth and come here to work. So the supply of labor will rise. Little word that you can know, brain drain, where the skilled labor is leaving the country. Okay. Last couple of slides. Here's a trade union. You know what a trade union is? This is the organization that represents workers, the people who gather together and they form a union to protect their rights. Trade unions are mainly there to negotiate pay, to raise pay, to negotiate working conditions, to say, look, you need to improve this, because when you go and argue with the employer, chances the employer will be like, yeah, leave. I don't want to listen to you. But when you go as a group, a collective group, a formal collective group, a trade union, now you have the power. You can negotiate your pay, you can negotiate your working conditions, you can stop discrimination from happening. There are age discrimination. I've worked in several places before, guys. I'll tell you what, because I was young and I was achieving really well so many years ago, they not even achieving really well. Let's put you, I was really young. They're like, nah, you're too young, you probably can't do this job. Why? What's wrong with me? I can do it. Yeah. So discrimination by age or any of the other ways, or even by gender, yeah, or even by color of your skin. There's so many forms of discrimination that can happen. So trade unions will protect you from that. If you are sued and you go to court or something, trade union will protect you from that. The trade union will force the government to try to pass labor laws so there's more rights for workers. They can also provide special benefits like strike pay. They say, let's all go on strike. And they ask for strike pay. They give you pay until you go on strike. When you go on strike, you won't get money, yeah? So here they give you strike pay. So here, you can see the effects of trade unions. Wage rates will increase. Employers, the problem is employers may not be able to afford the wage rate, so they will unemploy staff. But staff may not be unemployed because now when the wage rate increase, staff are motivated, right? They're really pumped up to work because they've got a lot more money. They will become more productive. When they do become more productive, employers will keep them. And one more thing, what if the employer just pays you a higher wage and they just tell the customer, okay, pay a higher price because I have to pay a higher wage? Simple as that. Now, these few things called closed shop and secondary picketing is illegal. Yeah. A closed shop means a company or factory where all the workers will belong to a particular trade union. You can't say all of you are working here, all of you have to join this trade union. No, that's illegal at some point. Yeah. Secondary picketing, workers in one workplace or company strike in a group at a particular location in order to support the striking workers in a different workplace. You can't go and picket on someone else's behalf. If you're on this trade union, you stick to this. You can't go and strike on another trade union's strike. Before you can go on strike, you must have a secret ballot. This is a way of voting in which people write their choices on a piece of paper in secret and they say yes or no whether they should go on strike or not. And here's what happens. Demand for labor, supply of labor. Because of the trade union guys, the supply curve comes up to here and it kinks. It won't go down further. It'll kink like that and it'll break from there. So this means that this is the wage rate here, 100. The trade union said, you know what? No, we will not supply workers until you pay 200. So at 200, they'll supply workers. And anything more than that, they will supply workers. But there can be a problem because of the higher wage rate. The supply of labor is 75. But the demand for labor is only 25. Workers, the job firms will be like, I do not want to employ anymore. 50 people may be unemployed. Now, this is a little problem there. Final slide for the day, government intervention. The government can intervene in the microeconomy too. They may want to promote competition. They may want to protect consumer interests, protecting consumers. They may want to control mergers and takeovers. They may want to protect employees. They may want to limit monopoly power. Let's go into it and take a look. They want to promote small firms from growing. They want to promote them to grow. They give them subsidies. They give them advice. They reduce the taxes. They may even remove barriers to entry. They may say legal barriers, all these forms and regulation, or remove, just come in. They may introduce anti-competitive legislation. They say if we see someone kind of being anti-competitive, kind of saying, or blocking you off from coming in or something, we'll protect you. That's to promote competition. What about protecting consumers' interests? You can set a maximum price. For example, a water bottle of water. Yeah. They can set the price to 35 rupees, for example. And they can say, this is the maximum price. You can't charge higher than that. Can't exploit the customer. They can fine companies who try to block competition so that consumers can now get better innovative stuff. They can fine companies trying to raise price by working together. Remember I talked about collusion? If you work together and try to raise price, they can fine you. Consumers will benefit then. Some firms try to merge and become one big firm. They can block off these mergers and take over. Because when you become a big firm, you're going to exploit the customer because you're so big. So you're going to protect customers from unfairly high prices, lack of innovation, not providing good quality goods. Stop these mergers and takeovers. Let the competition go. Consumers will benefit. So they're going to control monopolies and mergers. They might even try to protect employees. How do they protect employees? They protect employees through minimum wage. They're going to say, you know what? We're going to pay, you have to pay the workers minimum so much. If you don't pay them a minimum of this much, we'll fine you. When you increase the minimum wage, guys, for employees, there's a better standard of living. Poverty will fall because they now have a higher salary. They become more productive. They become more motivated. And not just that, because of the minimum wage, the wages have gone up, the government will get more income tax. Income tax. Yep. Finally, they can limit monopoly power. Because when you become monopoly and you're the only firm supplying in the market, you know what's going to happen? You're going to exploit customers. So as such, you know what they're going to do? They're going to have a watchdog. These are competition commissions. They watch. If you are a monopoly and you're exploiting the customer, I will come in and find you. So these are little things that the government can intervene for. Yeah. So with that being said, guys, that is it for microeconomics on the main topics. There may be a few other topics I may not have touched on, guys, but these are the main topics that I try to cramp in under 2 hours. So end of the session, guys. Thank you for joining in. Stay tuned. I will also post a macroeconomics video that you can refer to. Thank you for joining in. Do like and subscribe if you want to get more tips and tricks in future about your papers, about A-levels, about O-levels, about all of that. So more things coming up, and if you need help personally and join our classes personally, you have the number on screen, +94 7739 54321. You can message us on WhatsApp. Thank you for joining in once again. Over and out. Till the next time.